Hello, music fans. You're watching Death by Unicorn, the channel where I talk about metal, rock, and prog music, and sometimes some other genres. And this is what I'll be listening to in February and March of 2025. I think I've got 46 albums on my list so far that I plan to check out. And I figured I'd just kind of tell you what's on my radar in case you're excited for any of these and in case you're wondering what's coming out soon that you might want to listen to. So let's start off with February 7th. That'll see the release of Dream Theater's new album, Parasomnia, the 16th album by this American band, and it's progressive metal. And it's their first studio album in over 15 years to feature original drummer Mike Portnoy. I enjoyed the three early release singles from this so far. My favorite's probably Midnight Messiah. I hear some callbacks to other past Dream Theater songs in there, which is cool. Definitely one to check out if you like progressive metal. They're the Kings. Next up on the same day, Jinjer is releasing their new album Duel, fifth album by this Ukrainian band, progressive metalcore, kind of gent, kind of groove metal, maybe even, yeah, like pretty much progressive metalcore, I guess is the best way to describe it. Great female vocals by Tatiana Shmelyuk. I don't know how to pronounce her name. Sorry, Tatiana, who can scream like a beast, and she also sings really well too. So check that out if you like some of the more intense progressive metalcore, heavy breakdowns, groove, and screams, growls, but also great singing. Lots of great songwriting from Ginger. Next up on the same day, February 7th, we have Obscura releasing a Sonication, the seventh album by this German band. And this is technical death metal with progressive influences. And I love almost all their work, so I expect this to be similarly excellent. Check it out if you're a fan of technical death metal that has a progressive edge to it, like the Faceless, or if you like Cynic's first album. I think there's a bit of controversy around this one from Obscura. Unfortunately, former members of the band are claiming they wrote some of the parts. I think Alex Weber claims he wrote some bass parts before he left the band and got written communication that the material would not be used, but it was used note for note. That's not cool if that's true. Hopefully, they can at least give him a writing credit or something, or share some royalties or whatever they agree to is as fair. Either way, though, that's kind of just a blemish on one of the tracks that we know of, and hopefully not more. So I hope the rest of the tracks will be awesome to make up for that bad taste in my mouth. But I still really like Obscura, so I'll be checking this one out. Next up, we have Squid releasing Cowards, the third album by this band from the UK. This is art rock with post-punk, experimental rock, post-rock, math rock, indie rock, krautrock, ambient, progressive rock, new wave, kind of all mixed in there. Interesting sound. I thought their second album was very good. I'm hoping this one captures me even more. If you're a fan of Black MIDI and Black Country New Road, definitely check this out. Next up on February 7th, still, I've got Saor releasing Amidst the Ruins, the sixth album by this band from the UK. This one's atmospheric post-black metal with some folk influences. And it's the sixth album by this Scottish band. And their last album, Origins from 2022, is very good. I enjoyed the two singles I heard from this album ahead of time as well. Uh, yeah, I'm hoping they outdo their last album on this. I think they have great potential. So check that out. Sour Amidst the Ruins. Next, last on my list for February 7th, I've Guided by Voices with the Universe Room. This is the 41st album by this American band, so they're very prolific. And it's indie rock with power pop and progressive rock influences. And I've never heard an album by them before, but I have heard Scott from the Prog Corner mention them several times. I saw this new album was coming out, so I listened to the early single Fly Religion and I enjoyed it. So I figure now's a good time to check them out. Just hope I don't like it too much because then I might have to binge 40 albums of music I haven't heard, and that's a lot. Now let's jump over to February 14th, Valentine's Day. We've got Pattern Seeking Animals releasing. Friend of All Creatures, the fifth album by this American band, and it's progressive rock. This band's formed by current and former members and collaborators of the great band Spock's Beard. So I'm, of course, interested in that. I love Spock's Beard, and I've loved all the stuff that Pattern Seeking Animals has put out so far. They're very solid. And next up on Valentine's Day, I've got Dr. Mocker with Constant Current Stimulus. And this one's orange because I've actually already heard this one. Big thanks to the group for getting me an early copy of this. I think it was the label that sent that over to me via my email. If you're a band or you're a label and you want me to talk about your music in some of my videos, definitely send me an email. My email's in the about section of my channel. And if it's, metal, progressive rock, or any kind of rock really, or if it's just something that sounds interesting to me, I'll likely put it on my list if you send me it, and I'll likely mention you on my channel. So this one is actually a one-man project. It's a debut album, and it's an American project. It's progressive rock, kind of electronic, alternative, drone, krautrock, post-rock, psychedelic rock, post-hardcore, and art rock all mixed together. It's a one-man project by Dan Murphy. He's a multi-instrumentalist and songwriter based in Brooklyn. He's played in various indie rock acts in the New York and Philadelphia areas since 2009. But in 2020, he began releasing solo dark ambient synth work under the moniker Droning Muffler. But 2023 saw the release of the Spark Chamber EP under the name Dr. Mocker. And this project marked this new direction towards psych rock and krautrock. Big thank you to, oh yeah, I did write down the name of the label, Negative Wingspan. They are a cassette label based in Brooklyn. They sent me an early promo of this. I enjoyed it. Definitely check this out if you're a fan of Porcupine Tree. It reminds me of kind of the more electronic, droning, psychedelic, spacey krautrock side of Porcupine Tree. And it gives me some vibes of the darker, more evil sounding King Crimson material. And after listening to this, I went back and I checked out the debut Dr. Mocker EP, and it's also very good. So yeah, I highly recommend Dr. Mocker Constant Current Stimulus. And lastly, on my Valentine's Day list is Thomas Erak and the Ouroboros with their album AU, the debut album by this particular group. Thomas Erak is an industry veteran, though. He was in the great band The Fall of Troy. So this is post-hardcore with emo, progressive rock, and math rock influences. And I love The Fall of Troy, and I enjoyed the two early release singles I heard from this. Uh, so yeah, one of them was ADDTM, which I think stands for Attention Deficit Disorder of the Masses. That doesn't feature any harsh vocals at all. It just focuses on singing. And then they've got the other one, You've Got the Wrong One Today, Buddy, which is an intense hardcore song with screaming like pretty much the whole way through. So I think you'll get a mix of songs on here, some really melodic, some soft, and then some just like chaotic, hardcore math rock, almost like mathcore, maybe we'll see. Curious to hear what this sounds like because I like the Fall of Troy quite a lot. All right, let's jump over to February 21st. Here I've got the metalcore legends Killswitch Engage releasing their ninth album. They're an American band, melodic metalcore. And I think they're just one of the best metalcore bands of all time. Everything they do is consistently excellent. So I'm looking forward to this. My main critique of them is just that a lot of what they do sounds very samey. So I hope they take some risks and branch out a bit. But they're always excellent for me. I just don't feel like they've ever quite made like a near masterpiece or a masterpiece yet. So hopefully this will be the one. And on February 21st, Silverstein is releasing Antibloom, the 12th album by this Canadian band. This is post-hardcore, emo screamo, melodic hardcore, a little bit of metalcore, maybe even sometimes it borders on metalcore with some breakdowns and Sometimes it goes a bit softer, almost sounds like indie rock. So they have a bit of variety to them, but that kind of post-hardcore emo stuff. And for Silverstein, I consider a handful of their albums excellent. But they've been very good over the last 10 years or so, but the material that they've been putting out just isn't as exciting to me. I feel like, again, the same critique with Killswitch Engage. They're a bit samey to everything they've done before. And their music's likely geared more towards angsty emo teens, so I've just kind of grown out of that style a bit. Even though I do still love some of their classic work from the past, I even appreciate their work from like a composition standpoint. They have great riffs. The new material from Silverstein is just kind of lacking in the amazing compositions and riffs that hooked me in their earlier stuff. So I hope they can get back to their glory days, potentially even make the best thing they've ever made. Let's hope for that. And next on February 21st, Motorpsycho is releasing a self-titled album, 29th album by this Norwegian band, and this is psych rock with indie, alternative, progressive, and hard rock influences. And I thought their last albums, their last two, Nay and Yay, were were very good, but I preferred the excellence of Ancient Astronauts from 2022. But definitely check this album out if you're a fan of King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. I think you'll like it. And last one for February 21st is Jason Bieler and the Baron von Bielski Orchestra with his album The Escapologist, the fourth album by this American musician. And it's progressive rock with hard rock and alternative metal influences. I thought their last album was very good, quirky, experimental in some parts, but also accessible in other parts. And I like the early single I heard from this one, Savior. I'm hoping this album even outdoes his last one, so it has a chance to perhaps make my year-end top 25 or top 50 or whatever I decide to make. But if you're a fan of Devin Townsend and Mr. Bungle, check it out because it's quirky like that, but maybe not as out there as those artists. Now let's jump over to February 28th. Havukruunu is releasing Tavastland, the fourth album by this Finnish band. It's black metal. And I thought their last album from 2020 was excellent. The early release single I heard from this is great as well. So definitely check that out if you like black metal. Everon's releasing Shells, the eighth album by this German progressive rock band, neo prog with metal influences. And I never listened to an album from them, but the single No Embrace was good. So I'll be checking this one out. Dim Gray's releasing Shards, the third album by this Norwegian band, and it's art rock with alternative, pop, indie, and progressive influences. Now, I thought their last album was good, but I wasn't blown away. I'm hoping they can outdo themselves on this one. Um, and the two singles sound really good, so I think this has potential to be better than their last album. Also on February 28th, Avantasia is releasing Here Be Dragons, the 10th album by this German band. And this is symphonic power metal. It's kind of like a rock opera, got some heavy metal, hard rock, progressive metal influences in there. The two singles I heard from this one have been really fun songs. So I'm looking forward to listening to the album. I think it'll be a fun album, unlikely to make my year-end list or anything, but as these types of power metal rock operas are usually a bit too cheesy to rank highly on my list, but they are fun to listen to, so I plan to check it out. Gleb Kolyadin is releasing Mobula also on February 28th, the fourth album by this Russian artist. It's progressive rock with classical, jazz fusion, and new age influences. And this is he's a Russian pianist, composer, and arranger, co-founder of the chamber prog duo I Am the Morning that originated in Russia and is now based in the UK. Never listened to a full album by him before, but I did enjoy the single I heard from this, which is called Glimmer. So check that out if you like piano. Architects is releasing The Sky, the Earth, and All Between on February 28th, the 11th album by this metalcore band from the UK. They've been mixing in alternative, sometimes progressive, gent, pop, industrial, and post-hardcore influences in with their metalcore. great musicians in this band, but I found their output has been pretty hit or miss over the course of their career. I like them best when they're actually at their heaviest. So some of their albums went a bit too pop and mainstream radio rock sounding for my taste. I actually hope for more like their heavy side. But I like when they embrace experimentation as well and genre bending, as long as it's not just too close to pop. I feel like I don't want to hear that from them. I kind of put them in the same category as Bring Me the Horizon as being very hit or miss band that started heavy and then kind of went more towards pop. But I'll see what they do on this one. And last one for February. And for this video, I was thinking of doing February and March in this video. It might be a bit of a long video, but hopefully people who really like hearing what's coming out will enjoy that. Uh, Last on my February list is Arion, not Arion like the Arion Lucasen project, but Arion with The Light That Burns the Sky, the fourth album by this Finnish band. And this is symphonic power metal. Never heard an album like that before, but I plan on checking them out. Now let's jump into March, and hopefully I can get through it faster than I did February. Jethro Tull is releasing Curious Ruminant on March 7th, the 24th album by this great prog rock band. It's a great British band. They're legendary progressive folk rock and with hard rock influences. And I like the single Curious Ruminant, the first single. And I just recently heard the second single, which I also enjoyed. I think Jethro Tull is well past their prime, though. They don't make anything bad ever, so I'm sure this will be enjoyable, but likely just not as classic and impressive as some of their 70s material. Also, March 7th, Spirit Box is releasing Tsunami Sea, the second album by this Canadian band, and this is progressive metalcore, djent with alternative metal, post metal, and pop influences. I thought their debut was excellent. Great female vocals by Courtney here. She's one of the best in the business. She can do great screams as well as amazing clean singing. Definitely check that out if you like metalcore and especially like female fronted metalcore bands. You'll love this. They're one of the best for sure. And Whitechapel's releasing Hymns in Dissonance, the ninth album by this American band, and it's progressive deathcore with groove metal. Car Mechanics releasing Transmutation, sixth album by this Swedish band, symphonic progressive rock with neo-prog influences. Never heard an album by them before, surprisingly, but I looked at the special guest list on this album and I knew I had to hear it. They've got Jonas Reingold on bass. I enjoy his work with the Tangent and Kaipa. He also plays with the Steve Hackett band and many other bands. You know he's good. He was formerly in the Flower Kings. Then their special guests on this album include Andy Tillison from The Tangent, Simon Phillips on drums on 3 tracks, John Mitchell, Randy McStein, Greg Blondell on drums on 2 tracks, Nick DiVirgilio on drums on 1 track, Steve Hackett on nylon acoustic guitar on 1 track, and more. So really great guests on here. That's really got my attention. I'll be checking this out. Also, March 7th, Ghost of the Machine is releasing Empires Must Fall, the second album by this band from the UK. Symphonic progressive rock, kind of AOR, a little bit of metal and neo-prog in there. I haven't heard their debut album yet, but I like the 2 singles that I heard from this album ahead of time. Very melodic and accessible prog rock music. Also, March 7th, Echolin is releasing Time Silent Radio 7 and Time Silent Radio 2, the 10th album by this American band. I guess it's the 10th and the 11th album because it's actually 2 albums. I put them on the same line though. Symphonic progressive rock, and surprisingly, I've never heard any of their albums in full before this. I've heard some of the preview tracks now in a live stream on the Prog Corner YouTube channel. Really enjoyed them there. Their Kickstarter supporters already got these albums from them in January 2025 via download well before this official release in March, but was unfortunately not one of those Kickstarter people, but I look forward to hearing this when it's more widely available in March. Cryptosis is releasing Celestial Death, the second album by this Dutch progressive thrash metal band. And I thought their debut was very good. I enjoyed their split with Vector as well. So I'm looking forward to this. I heard the track Faceless Matter ahead of time. I enjoyed that. So check this out if you're a fan of progressive thrash metal. If you like Vector and Voivod, and you want to hear that mixed with like black metal and death metal and symphonic metal influences too, for fans of Emperor, Eson, and Death. Imagine combining those bands, and that's kind of what this Cryptosis sounds like. Check that out if that sounds good to you. Last on my list for March 7th, not sure I actually want to listen to this album, but Lady Gaga is putting out Mayhem, and this is a pop album, her eighth album. She's an American musician. Sometimes she brings in some rock, but mostly like electronic, dance, pop. Sometimes she's can do jazz influences too. Like she's definitely a really talented musician, great vocalist. But she's a pop star. I'm not sure I'll end up liking this. I like some of her songs, so I am a bit curious. So I put this on my list. I may skip it because this kind of pop music usually doesn't work for me in album format. Like maybe a couple singles here and there will be catchy and I'll like them, but I'm not sure if I want to listen to a whole album. We'll see. I put it on the list just in case people want to know one release that's going on in the big world of pop. Let's jump over to March 14th. Steven Wilson's putting out the Overview, the eighth album by this English musician who founded Porcupine Tree, and it's progressive rock, progressive art rock, some pop, alternative, electronic influences in there. And Steven Wilson has been in many, many great bands, Blackfield, No Man, Storm Corrosion. And I've heard this album features two long epic length tracks, like 20 minutes each or something. So that sounds really interesting. I like his more prog rock albums like Raven and Hang Cannot Erase. I respect all his work, but those two to me are his masterpieces, and I hope this can rival those. Coheed and Cambria is releasing Vaxis 3, The Father of Make Believe, the 11th album by this American band, and it's progressive rock with pop punk, post-hardcore, emo, alternative rock, hard rock, electronic influences. I like the first two albums in their Vaxis series, but they haven't quite reached the heights of their two Good Apollo albums, which I love, and their two Afterman albums that I love as well, and even their In Keeping Secrets of Silent Earth 3. I think those five albums from them are all near masterpieces. So I'm hoping this one can get back up to that level, and be better than Vaxis 1 and 2. But it's going to be good for sure. It's just a matter of like how good is it going to be mind-blowing. Tiktalika is releasing Gods of Pangea on March 14th, and I'm calling this their second album. It's Charlie Griffiths from Haken. His first album was actually called Tiktalika, the album title, and it was under his name, Charlie Griffiths. And now he's releasing a solo album where he's referring to the artist name as Tiktalika and the album as Gods of Pangea. It's progressive metal. So I'm going to call this the second album because it's Charlie Griffiths from Haken again. Looks like he just is going by Tiktalika now. And that debut album, Tiktalika, was a near masterpiece for me. And the title track from this one that I heard ahead of time is an awesome track, very thrash metal inspired. If you're a fan of Megadeth meets Haken and like Between the Buried and Me, he does feature Tommy Giles from Between the Buried and Me on vocals on one of the tracks on here, and he features Rhodey Walker from Protest the Hero on vocals. So two vocalists that I love from two of my favorite bands will be on this. So I'm definitely checking this out. And the last one for March 14th is Envy of None with Stygian Waves, the second album by this American art rock band, kind of pop, alternative, industrial, electronic. And this is the band that features Alex Lifeson from the great Canadian band Rush on guitar. Great female vocals in this band too. It definitely sounds very different from Rush. So if you go in expecting it to sound like Rush, you're not going to be happy. But if you just want to hear what Alex Lifeson's up to and you want to hear some great catchy art pop rock music, then you probably should check this out. Envy of None, Stygian Waves. Now let's talk about March 21st. I have a box set on here. I don't usually talk that much about these, but it's Rush. So I love Rush. This is Rush 50 box set. So I guess it's like their 50th anniversary box set. I guess they've been their debut came out in 74, so it's actually been 51 years. Not sure why it's called Rush 50 or what the special occasion is here, but it's a compilation, progressive rock. It includes 50 tracks. That's probably why it's called Rush 50, including seven that are unreleased tracks from the early days. So those are the ones I'm most interested in hearing. And then it's got a collection of live and studio tracks that feature selections from every studio live and deluxe reissue album by Rush. So kind of like a like here's a chronology of Rush and like almost like a greatest hits plus some early works. Hopefully it's available on streaming. I'm not sure I want to pay a pretty penny for this fancy box set, but I figured I'd put it on my list because prog rock fans are probably interested in it. Also on the same day, March 21st, ORK is releasing Firehose of Falsehoods, the fifth album by this multinational prog rock band. It's progressive art rock with alternative rock, grunge, metal, and experimental influences. And this band, ORK, features members from Australia, Italy, and the US. It features former Porcupine Tree bassist Colin Edwin and former King Crimson drummer Pat Mastelotto. They're both amazing players. The vocals are by Lorenzo Esposito Fornassari, aka Lef, and he sounds like Chris Cornell. So check this out if you want to hear the sound of Porcupine Tree meets Soundgarden. That's ORK with Fire Hose of Falsehoods. Imperial Triumphants releasing Gold Star, the sixth album by this American band. This is avant-garde, technical, blackened, dissonant death metal. It's got jazz fusion influences. Very unique and interesting avant-garde band. They wear costumes, and I enjoyed the three early release singles I heard so far from this. Check it out if you're a fan of Garia, Blut Ost Nord, but if you want to hear more death metal and jazz influences in those bands, those bands are more like black metal, but if you combine some black metal, death metal, jazz, some weirdness, then you get Imperial Triumphant. Sometime in February is releasing Where Mountains Hide on March 21st. This is a debut album by this instrumental progressive metal band with jazz fusion influences. And I heard three of the early release singles here. I think if you're a fan of intervals and Scale the Summit, you'll like this. They have a track called The Bad Fight, which features Paul Wagner from Between the Buried and Me on guitar. He's always amazing. And they also feature Dan Briggs from Between the Buried and Me on here too. So really love that. Cradle of Filth is releasing The Screaming of the Valkyries, the 14th album by this band from the UK, symphonic melodic black metal with gothic metal, death metal, and thrash metal influences. And I've never really been a big fan of Cradle of Filth, but I've liked a few of the songs from them that I've heard over the years. Haven't really done a deep dive on them or listened to full albums. But the two singles I heard from this album ahead of for the release, they're interesting to me, so I decided to check this out, even though I don't expect it'll make my year-end list or anything like that. But I particularly liked their thrashy song To Live Deliciously. And last one for March 21, I've got Bloodywood with New Delhi. This is the third album by this Indian alternative metal band with new metal, rap, metalcore, and Indian folk influences. And I hadn't heard an album by them before, but this single Tadka got me interested in checking out this album. The music video is pretty silly but fun. Funny to hear such a heavy song about Indian food with like breakdowns and rapping and screaming and heavy metal riffs. Just a fun song. And I think I saw they did like a collab with Baby Metal, so that's pretty cool. So check that out if that sounds interesting to you. Bloodywood with New Delhi. Now, I've got something on here that's not an album or not officially announced as an album yet, but it's Devin Townsend is doing a live show on March 27th with the North Netherlands Symphony Orchestra and Choir. And he's performing his progressive metal rock opera, The Moth. And I really hope this will be recorded audio, video as well, if possible. Uh, Symphonic and ambient influences are expected here in this progressive metal rock opera. And he announced it as a one-time show in the Netherlands. And this is never before heard music. Rock opera The Moth won't be staged anywhere else in the world, though he did announce a second date, but I think it's just in the same area. I forgot to look at where that is, but he's not doing it in his home country of Canada. But The Moth tells the story of the human experience from birth to death, comparable to the transformation of a caterpillar into a moth. It symbolizes the human quest for meaning and offers perspectives on the fear of death through analogy and narrative. And ever since Townsend witnessed large musicals such as Jesus Christ Superstar and Phantom of the Opera in the 70s, he's seen this project as his calling. So this album or this piece of work, this stage show musical, The Moth, has been in the making for over a decade, and Townsend's been building towards it for 30 years. So I really want to hear this, but I'm not going to make my way over to the Netherlands. Somebody please record this so that the rest of the world can hear this. I don't know if they have already recorded it and they'll release the album after the live show, or if they're going to just record it live. They might do that because it might just make more financial sense to like have him go over to the Netherlands and record live, or maybe they'll record their rehearsals um, and like make the album out of that. Hope this becomes an album anyway. We shall see. Last day on my list here is March 28th, and I've got a joint album or joint EP coming out from Invent, Animate, and Silent Planet called Bloom in Heaven. This is two American metalcore bands, kind of progressive, genty metalcore with alternative metal and post-hardcore influences. And they're putting out this collaborative EP to support the tour that they're going on together that showcases their albums Heavener and Super Bloom on that tour. Each show will find Silent Planet performing their full-length Super Bloom in full, and Invent Animate will perform their album Heavener in full as well. And presumably they may amalgamate on stage to perform these Bloom in Heaven songs together. Speaking of heaven, next up is Deaf Heaven with Lonely People with Power, the sixth album by this American band, and this is atmospheric post-black metal with shoegaze, screamo, dream pop influences. Their last album, Infinite Granite, had the band performing in more of a post-rock and shoegaze sound, shifting away from their earlier black metal sound. But the single I heard from this one, Magnolia, is far heavier than anything I recall from Infinite Granite. It has intense black metal shrieking vocals the whole time over intense black metal music. It still has this atmospheric beauty and ambience present. But it'll be interesting to see if the whole album is that heavy and intense or how they balance the beauty and the brutality and intensity on this one. Also, March 28th, The Darkness is releasing Dreams on Toast, the eighth album by this band from the UK, hard rock with glam rock, power pop, and heavy metal influences. And this is a band where I actually own and enjoy their debut album. And I like their hits from that album back in the day when it came out in 2003. But I kind of lost interest in them a bit when I got into heavier stuff. Um, but so I didn't really hear any of their albums from 2005 to 2017. I got back into them recently, though, with their last two albums, Motorheart and Easter is Canceled. Both pretty good. I'm not in love with the band. They're not high up on my favorites, but they're a really fun band. They have this intense, high-pitched vocals and fun guitar parts. And I've enjoyed watching Justin Hawkins' YouTube videos lately. And yeah, the two singles, they're nothing earth-shattering, but they're over the top, fun party rock. If you like AC/DC and Van Halen stuff, that's like party hard rock with high vocals, you'll probably like The Darkness. So check that out. On the same day, Mumford and Sons is releasing Rushmere, the fifth album by this British band, and it's folk rock with indie, alternative, pop, country, and bluegrass. And I really enjoyed their first album, but I lost interest in them too, just like with The Darkness. They kept falling further and further down my list of bands to pay attention to, but the single here, Rushmere, the title track's pretty good, so maybe they'll get back on track. IQ's releasing Dominion, the 13th album by this British band. It's neo-progressive rock. They're a well-respected progressive rock band, but I've surprisingly never listened to a full album by them that I can recall. Arch Enemy's releasing Blood Dynasty, the 12th album by this Swedish band. It's melodic death metal, strong female vocals here, harsh screams and singing. Their last album was very good. I really like Jeff Loomis, who they had on guitar. I respect his playing from his work with Nevermore and his solo albums, but it's too bad to see he's no longer in the band. But I'm excited that he left the band because I've heard he'll be working on new Nevermore material, which I find a lot more exciting than Arch Enemy. And I imagine the replacement they have will be great, but it'll be hard to live up to Jeff Loomis. The singles I heard sound great, but I don't think there's going to be very many surprises here from Arch Enemy. Probably just another solid and enjoyable album, but nothing I expect to make my year-end list. And last on my list is Memphis Mayfire with their album Shapeshifter, the eighth album by this American metalcore band. They have post-hardcore, pop, and alternative metal influences. And I've never really been into them, but everything I've heard by them has been decent. I plan to check this out of curiosity. The single I heard ahead of time, Chaotic, sounds like a classic mid 2000s metalcore band, really catchy choruses. And of course, the breakdown. That breakdown sounds a lot like kind of more like 2010s metalcore. It's a bit genty. Definitely check this out if you like metalcore. Shapeshifter by Memphis Mayfire. And that's my list of albums that I'll be listening to in February and March. Probably I'll discover some more that pop up or that I hear about over the course of February and March. But if I listen to all of these by this point, by the end of March, I'll have heard 72 albums, and that puts me on track for just over 210. I guess 72 times 3 is what, 216. That's my mental math for the day. So if I keep up this pace of album listening, I'll listen to 216 albums this year. I'll probably end up listening to more because I always discover stuff along the way that I don't have on my radar. Um, but yeah, I'm trying not to listen to as much music this year as I did last year. Last year I went over 400 and it was just too much. I didn't have enough time to re-listen to the ones that I loved as much as I wanted to. So I'm trying to do a little bit less this year. I'm trying to aim in the, maybe keep it below 365 so it's less than one a day. That should be my goal for the year. Listen to fewer than 365 new albums. That way I can still spin the ones that I like many times. So those are the albums that I'll be checking out. Let me know down in the comments if there's anything else coming out in February or March that you're interested in, or anytime really. If you are like, hey man, check this out. It's coming out in April or May. If you know about stuff that far ahead of time, let me know if you think I'll enjoy it. If it's in the metal, rock, and prog genres, I probably will. And let me know which of these you're the most excited for. Did I let you know about any that you hadn't heard of yet, but that you're really excited for after my quick description? Hope I was able to turn you on to some new music. And if you want to hear my first impressions of these as they come out each week, I post my first impressions of the new albums that I listen to. So hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for next time. Peace out.